Welcome back, everybody. This is Edwin the Magic Engineer, and I know I've been offline for a little bit. Sorry to you guys about that. My absolute top priorities are family and job, and just those two things have just been in a great place. There's been a lot of cool family friend things going on, and there's been a lot of work going on, a lot of extra hours. So apologies for everybody that I've been offline. I'm not quitting anything. I've just been busy. It's just a little season from something and getting back to it. So this video is all about printing proxies, and this is a topic that I'm really excited about. This topic because I'm a huge evangelist for Magic the Gathering players having access to the cards that they want to play, to actually just be able to play with people. And the reason that's a big debate is, for anyone who's new to this kind of topic, some of these cards are just crazy expensive. I mean, by crazy expensive, like I actually attend tournaments where my opponent across from me literally might be playing like a $50,000 to $100,000 deck. I mean, it's insane, right? For these old school and vintage tournaments and stuff like that, it can be absolutely insane. And a lot of people just can't hang with that. Even on the lower end of the scale, like the newer formats, you'll still run into people that have $200-300 decks. And if you're just trying to get in and learn how to play, there's a big barrier there. So I made another video a while ago when I first started my channel, like all about proxies, and I talked about them at length, but I never said how to actually create them. So I'm going to first show you guys a bunch of information about how to actually create proxies. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to revisit some of the topics about like why I think this is a good thing and why I don't think this is actually a bad thing for Wizards of the Coast, and what I would consider to move away from the realm of proxies into a realm of what we would call counterfeits, and how to avoid that, because we don't want to do counterfeits, right? We don't want to steal anyone's money or intellectual property. That's not the idea here, right? So anyways, about the creation of proxies, there's a couple major websites that are good to know about. Let me flip you guys over to my secondary display. The two main websites that I use for actually gathering the images, one of them is now referred to as Scryfall. It used to be Magic Cards Info. And then the other one is Wizards of the Coast own page, just called The Gatherer. So here's some notes that I've actually got on the topic, and all I was trying to show you guys is that Magic Cards Info is now Scryfall, and so it's this page and this page that we're actually going to use. And then the imaging software that I use to actually create the proxies is just Microsoft Paint, because that comes in all Windows. And the images that I'm actually going to pull off of this site, off of Scryfall, they all have this default resolution, and then you'll see how I get to the print sheet size. So let's actually just get to that first. So this is the Scryfall site, and let's say what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to actually just get my images and collect them, right? So what's the first thing that everyone's going to look for? Everyone's going to look for like Black Lotus, right? It's going to be the first thing anyone's going to want to look for. So there's the Blacker Lotus and the Black Lotus both showed up here. So if I click on the Black Lotus, you'll notice that this doesn't look like the traditional one. And over here on the side, I can actually see all the different versions that exist. So in this case, let's say I want beta. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and say copy image. Then I'm going to come right down here to the start menu, and I'm going to say MS Paint. And I'm going to load up Microsoft Paint. There it is. Took a second to come up. Sorry about that. Okay, so now that I've got Paint open, it's already got too big of a template open. I need to make it smaller. So what I'm going to do is hit Control E here, and I'm going to shrink the size down to 9 and 9. And then hit OK. And now see, it's just this tiny little size here, only 9 pixels by 9 pixels. Then when I hit paste, what actually comes in is the image that came from that website. But now we're looking at just the raw image, right? Now, one reason I like to do this site, the Scryfall one, is you see how nice and clear the letters are? This would never work for an actual counterfeit card, because you cannot see the print patterns. It's not good enough to make a counterfeit out of, but it is good enough to actually see nice clarity on the lettering and such, so you can actually read the card. If I'm going to open up another instance of Paint here, and then I'm going to go grab an image off of Gatherer. So let's grab the Black Lotus here off of Gatherer. Then I go to the beta version. So I'm looking at the biggest image that they've got, and if I copy this image, cancel, and I go paste this one, let's do the same trick, Control E, then go 9 pixels by 9 pixels to make it small, then I paste. Now what you've got here is I just zoomed in. See how bad quality all of the text there is? If I make this one maybe similar size or close to similar size, and we look at these two side by side, now you can clearly see the left here is what I actually got from the official Wizards site, the Gatherer, and on the right is what I actually got from Scryfall. So obviously Scryfall is a lot more clear. Now, again, I'm not making counterfeits, but I want to actually be able to read what my proxy actually is. So I don't want to use the images that I'm getting off of Gatherer, given the choice. I want to use the one I got off of Scryfall, which means I'm starting with this image. But now this one looks too much like the original Lotus, and I don't want that, right? So then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, just to make sure you're being clear and legit with everybody, you're going to want to write proxy. Let's make this the right size. And put it somewhere like right on the card. So when you print out a version of this, it's very clear to everybody you're not attempting or making any claim that this is a real card. It is just a proxy. But see, that wording isn't very, that lettering isn't very fun. What I've actually got here is when I've been making my own proxies, I've got images here. And let's see, not in that folder, it's in this folder. I made this image here. And this one is nice because it might be hard to tell on the camera, but it's actually got black letters surrounded with yellow. I actually went in with paint and I colored it. If I change the color of the background here, it's easy to see. If I did something like that, you can see that it's got black surrounded by yellow lettering. And I wanted that specifically because when I grab that and I paste it in, it just looks a little bit cooler, right? So I'm going to grab this image, Control C. Then I'm going to come back over to this Lotus image, and let's say I'm going to want to paste it into the center of the card here, right? Like maybe right about there. So if I put it in, now I don't want that border there. So if I come over to the main menu, I need to go fuller to have more options. And I click on select and then transparent. What that does is any color that's here in color 2 becomes the transparent color. And right now that one is white. And so all that white section went away, and all I've got here is just what's not white. And so now I can just paste that in, and when I zoom out, you've got a little bit better looking word of proxy there, right? And so with this little simple step, what you've basically got at this point is you've got yourself, go back there, you've now got a proxy that just like says proxy right in the middle. The image quality is pretty good, but you're not quite done yet, right? Because what you want to do is you want to print them into a sheet. And the size really matters. But if you're just going to print them into a sheet, maybe something like this. I don't know if I can get good lighting on it. So this is a print sheet that I made, and it's from those images that are all from Scryfall. And it's all just white back. It's on normal, just paper. And if you look really close, you'll see like I wrote proxy on all of those actual images, right? You can see the proxy like right there in the middle for like the Lotus and like all those others. Now I did that intentionally because again, I don't want to make counterfeits. But the size of the card is really important, right? If it's too big, then when you try to put that in with the other cards, it's not going to fit in your sleeve. If it's too small, then it's just going to look all weird. You got to get the size right, but you really don't want to waste a lot of ink, right? And so what you're going to want to do is do this. You're going to want to make like a grid pattern, and then you got to get it to about the right size. Now let me show you guys what I actually did for that. So we're going back to the paint image here, right? Now I'm just going to focus on just this one. Now, if I hit Control E, I can see that this is 672 pixels wide, and it's 932 pixels, 936 pixels tall, right? So I know those dimensions. I'm going to write it down on a little sheet of paper here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control A, delete. Whole image is gone, right? I don't want that image to actually be there. And now I'm going to take the tool here and I'm going to pick the black color and I'm going to pick the paint can and I'm going to paint the whole thing black, right? Now I'm going to open up another instance of paint. And so now I've got a new instance of paint here and I'm going to make this one Control E again to bring up that size. And what I want is I want to make this one only 2 pixels smaller on each direction, right? This one was 672 wide, right? So what we want to do on this other one now, I can close this. So what I want to do on this one is it used to be 672, but I want to make it 2 pixels smaller. So I'm going to say 670. And then for the height, this was 936. And so instead of 936, I'm going to go 2 pixels smaller and say 934. Okay, so now we have another image. It's white, and it's almost the same size as this one, but it's slightly smaller. So I'll grab the Select tool. Now I hit Control A to grab the whole thing. Control C to copy. Now I go back over to this side, Control V. And I'll turn off transparent. And now what you've got is you've got that white one is pasted inside here. But remember how it was 2 pixels smaller? That's so when I line this up perfectly here, just give me a sec, right there. So now what I've got when I zoom in is you can see there's a black border around the entire thing. You can see over here on the right side of the screen, and it's only 1 pixel wide, right? Now that's important because I now have a nice thin border around this entire thing. Now, if I go back to the Select tool, and maybe I'll even save this as a little temporary thing because I'm showing you guys how to do this stuff. MTG images, and I'll make a new temp folder here. Helping people inside of there, and let's give this one a nice, easy to remember name so it's clear what I was doing. Card frame. Let's just say we're doing card frame. So now we want to make a grid pattern of it, right? Now, this image here is 672 pixels wide. So I'm going to do Control A, Control V. Now I'm going to open up a calculator. And let's make this image a little smaller so I can see them both. Now this one, Control E again to bring up this window. It's 672 pixels wide. So what we want to do over here is say 672 times 3, 2016. And so this new one we've just opened up, I want it to be 2016 wide. And this one, the original was 936 tall. So now we come back over to our nifty difty calculator. We say clear. Then we want 936 times 3, so it's 2808 tall. So we've done 3 times the width, 3 times the height. And that's what this new template over here is on the right. So now this one that I called card frame, if I say Control A, selects it, Control C, I copy it. Now I come to this one and I Control V and I paste. You can see right where that border was. In fact, if I zoom out, you can see it looks like it's about the right size for a card in the top third and top left third section. So now if I'm going to Control V again, I'm going to paste in more of these frames, right? But we don't want to just throw them anywhere. We want to line them up really good. So let me back those up. Control Z to back up. And I'll scroll over a bit and I Control V to paste. And now I can just line this guy up. And notice that I don't want to overlap them. I want them to just line up so all the pixels are represented. Now I'll come to this guy, paste him in. Boop. That's it. There we go. So that whole top section is all done. There's 3 cards across that top section. Now actually I want to repeat it down. And actually, you know what? I could have done this slightly differently. Let's go back to what that original number was. Control E. What was it? It was 936. So I'm going to come over here. And I'm going to turn this one back into 936. And I've just got this top section here. Now I'm going to say Control A, copy. Now I'm going to go back to the size that I want to be full size, 2808. And now if I hit paste, what I've got is a whole nother section of all 3 of those, right? And so I want to zoom in real good and make sure I've got these. So I'm holding the Control key and then rolling the mouse wheel to zoom in, by the way. Control V to paste. And let's line up that corner there, right there. Now I scroll down and do it one more time, just like that. There we go. Now if I zoom out, what I've got is a card frame that literally has 9 cards on it, right? And that's pretty good. We don't need this one anymore. We now have a better one over here. We're going to call it print frame. So now this is a good print frame, right? And now once we've got a print frame all saved here, what we want to do is start pasting cards into it, right? So if we come over to the Scryfall website and we right click and we say copy image, then we come back over here, zoom in a bit, and then we paste. You can see that that lotus just popped in right there, just all nice and perfect, right? Boop. You can even do several of them. And if you line up all those corners, you can print yourself a whole nice sheet of black lotuses, right? Let's like zoom in real good there to make sure we really get it nice and clean. Paste. And you can see the line up there, there, and there, and there. See how that black line went away? Boop. Like that. And so now you've got a bunch of lotuses in there. And you can print this sheet out. But hey, we still have a problem, right? Because we didn't know if this sheet of lotuses is going to like be the right size or the wrong size. We also don't have our little proxy symbol in there either. So I don't want that. There's a couple problems to solve here. So I hit Control Z and I backed out. Well, what we need to do, and this is one of the reasons I did it in this way where you can see this grid like this. What you actually want to do is you want to start attempting to print this because you want to make sure that you've got your scaling right. And let me flip back over to the other camera so I can show you kind of a bit more what I'm talking about. And in fact, I'm actually going to use this camera. So I'll bring the scale back in just a second. So now the first one that I was attempting to do, I printed out this sheet. And when I printed it at 33%. And you can see I marked it right there. And I wrote out the resolution on it. Now, when you print it, let me grab some of the cards that I printed. You know, these are some of the ones that I printed just a little bit ago, and I've got proxy written in the middle there. But there's a problem that you'll have if you're not paying close enough attention. If I grab a real magic card, and I put it on here, and if I hold it right over the top, if you look at these bottom corners here and here, that square, or the rectangle I should say, it's too small. It's going to be really small inside the sleeve. And if I hold it like this, and I look at this line and this line, this one it's too small this way. So dimensionally, or I should say aspect ratio from length to width, it's correct, but it's overall too small. Now, when I printed this one, I printed it and I wrote down the percentage. I wrote it was 33%. And I printed it like with just these black lines because I'm barely going to use any actual ink when I'm doing this. So, you know, you're going to save yourself a lot of printer, and whoever's paying for that ink, you're going to make them much happier, right? The next one that I printed, I took just an educated guess based on the size that it seemed to be and how close it was, and I guessed 35%. Let me pull that over to the screen. So when I did the 35% ratio, as you can see, that one is much closer to the actual lines on each side, and it's much closer to the lines on the top and the actual bottom either. So with my printer, printing at 35% is actually pretty darn good. Now, something to notice about that is my printer is a Canon Pixma MX 880. And the reason that's important is because the maximum DPI for mine is 9600 by 2400. That's something that is very important if you're trying to actually get the right size, get the right scaling. See, where was it? Was it this one? And then I go here. Now, you can see this is just a website talking about my actual printer, and you can see my resolution called out right here. Now, it doesn't matter that you're that same resolution. What the reason why that's important is for my printer, if that is my resolution, right? And then the size of the individual picture that I was printing was a very certain size. You could see the pixels on it. The ratio between the pixels and what I'm actually getting from my printer means that I'm going to scale mine at 35% to get them right. So you're just going to have to play with that a little bit to figure that out, which is why you want to do this grid pattern first, so you're not wasting a lot of ink as you figure it out. So now on mine, I've actually got it now figured out. So I know what the actual size was. And so this is the size of my pattern is going to be when mine is set at 35%. And let me just show you that. And actually, let me turn that back on. So if I was going to go back over to Paint, and if I was going to hit Print, and I go to Page Setup, then if I click Portrait and Adjust To, and then over here say 35%, then if I was to print this one, it would look just about right, right? But right now I just did Page Setup. So let's now do Print Preview. And you can see there was a problem. The line didn't appear here on the bottom. Now that's because the scaling of my printing is right, but the printer didn't allow enough space on the bottom. So if I now adjust this bottom profile, and let's say I go to like 0.2 or something like that, now you can see that bottom line pop in, so there's going to be enough space. So if I print this and then it looks right, okay, well now I'm ready to go, right? So now I need to go to the next step. And the next step, what's that going to be? Well, I've already made some of them here in these images. I made what's called print sheets. First, I'll show you that I took all these images and I downloaded a whole bunch of images of a bunch of important cards from the Scryfall website. If I zoom here, you can see the individual cards that I downloaded. And again, that was all from the Scryfall website, from this guy, right? And all that I did is I right-clicked and I said, copy image, right? And after I copy image, and I would just paste it into a different version of Paint. Let's see, I'll open that up. So let's get that. Copy, Paint. Okay, so there's the image. And then once you've got that, you just save the file. And then after you save the file, then the next thing I want to do is notice how none of these pictures, none of these actually said Proxy in the middle, right? And I didn't want to print ones that did not say Proxy. So then what I did is I saved all those and I made another folder I called Proxies. And then I literally went into each one of these and I put Proxy right in the middle of the card. For all these cards, they all say Proxy right in the middle, right? That's what I have in that folder. Then after I did that, then I made that print sheet just like I was describing. And so this is something else I did. See how there's holes here in the middle? That's so when I was pasting them in, all the cards actually have that little corner. Let me go back and show you that. The cards actually have a little corner here that actually was white, or it could be transparent. And things just worked out easier. If I went to my print sheet and I made my print sheet actually have the corners not show up. See, this is the print frame I just made to demo it to you guys. I'll close this one too. Save. Print sheets. Empty frame. So if I delete the corners out, then when I paste them all in, it looks a little bit better. And what I end up with is the print sheets that look like this. And so all my print sheets now, they all say Proxy right in the middle, and it's all the cards here. And notice that there's no space in between them. That's so when I come through, I can just make one cut and I don't have to then trim all the way to the edge. It's just one cut. Like use like a paper cutting machine, or like a, you know, the one with the big lever or the little needle that slides across, and you just give these one quick clip and then you're done. You know, you've got those all out. So now let's go back to this guy. So yeah, so let's move these out of the way. And that's how you show up with these print sheets, like this. So you just cut all these guys out, and then after you cut them all out, then you're going to be left with all the little paper versions, like this. And when you're left with all the little paper versions, you notice they're all just white back, and they all say Proxy right in the middle, right? Then if you decide you want to, you can just clip those little corners off. A little snippy. Just like that. And now you got a card that's all ready to slide into a sleeve. And so that's what I've done right here with these ones. Let me move this off. So with these cards, now these are real cards, and these are my proxies. And all that I did is I took a real Magic card, and I put the real card on the bottom to give it some rigidity, right, and some weight. And then I put the proxy on top of that, and then you slide that into your sleeve, just like that. And now you got a pretty good proxy. Now you might have noticed I had the scale out earlier. That's because you want your proxies to, from the outside, not be able to tell that it's a proxy, like from the back of the card or when you have it in your hand. You don't want it to feel different, right? So this is a card. What I normally do for my Magic cards is they're double sleeved. You can see it's real shiny there, right? It's because I got literally two sleeves. There's an inner sleeve and an outer sleeve. And so there's a little bit more thickness and a little bit more weight. Now if I put the double sleeve card on here, you can see I'm going to 3.49. What am I on, grams right now? Yeah, grams. And now if I go to the proxy that had just a piece of paper on it, 3.48 grams. That's pretty important actually, because the card, the paper, here's the real trick. Everything else is the same between these two, because you got a real Magic card inside there, right? Move those out of the way. That goes with that. You got a real Magic card that's actually inside of it, so the sleeve and the Magic card is the same. What's different is you have the inner sleeve versus the sheet of paper. And as long as you pick an inner sleeve that's about the same thickness and about the same weight as the printed paper that you've got, then your proxy is going to be really close to the actual sleeve, which means that when you put them all together, you're going to have something that's really close. So again, here's a proxy and here's a real card, and the thickness feels about right and the weight feels about right. So you put these in your deck and no one's ever going to be able to tell, and that's a good thing. So that's pretty much it for... that's the process that I use for actually making proxies. I grab the images online, I edit them into a print sheet, and I print out a wireframe just to make sure I've got all the ink right and everything, so I'm not wasting it, and I've got about the right size. And then I write proxy on all of them, so they're all going to say proxy and it's very clear. And then I make my sheets. So that's the process. If that's all you want to know, go ahead and stop the video. Go ahead and hit like, and I hate you, Edwin. Blah, blah, blah. I hate Edwin. So anyways, now I'm going to soapbox for a little bit. The reason why I think proxies are important is there's a huge battle that happens between what I term the collectors versus the players of Magic. There's people that really care about the collection value, and like they want in the secondary market their cards not to lose value, and they tend to like want to have the highest cards, and they kind of hoard their cards, and so there's this collector mentality, right? And some people refer to them as MTG finance, and that's outside of the realm of just collectors. You know, those two things are not completely synonymous. But anyways, you got this collector mentality, and then you got people that just want to play the game, right? And you got these two warring factions, and these two warring factions comes out like all over the place, like the reserve list and everything, but neither side really has more validity than the other side, because Magic always was a collectible card game. It's always been collectible, and it's always been a card game. Neither one is the default right answer. They both have valid reasons to actually exist. And so for decades now, it's been a question of how do you resolve these two worlds. And if I could give one thing to the community, if I could echo my voice on one topic, it would basically be that I think proxies are the answer to that fight. And the reason is that the collectors should actually like proxies, because proxies allow more people to come in and play in different formats that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. As those players come in, and then they get in cheaply, but then nobody wants to use proxies. Nobody, right? You don't feel as good about yourself when you're using a proxy and everyone else is using real cards. And there's also just that, I mean, that collector desire comes out as well. My experience with using proxies and working with people that themselves like proxies is that it's a short-term thing. They're actually going to want to transition to real cards. And so people come in because the proxies are cheap, but then they start buying the real cards. And so the next thing you know, if you only had a group this big that was buying cards, but then you let more people in because they all got in because of proxies, now they all start buying cards, and the demand for the actual cards goes up, and it actually raises, not lowers, the value. So the collectors win because the card values actually go up. But then the players actually win too, because they actually got to play in formats where they didn't previously get to play. And so that was a really good thing for them, right? And so proxies are literally a solution of it fixes the collectors and it fixes the players. And I truly believe that the reservations that each one of them has are really, they get fixed if you really like have that conversation and talk that out. I think those issues honestly all just go away. And now about counterfeits versus proxies, there's a very clear distinction between them. A proxy makes no effort whatsoever to come off as a real card. A proxy is just a clear stand-in for a card. It's not meant to look real. It's not meant to deceive anyone. You want it to at least look enough like the card so you can recognize it. You can see it across the table and be like, oh, I know what that is. And you want it to have the words of the card on it and the casting cost and all that. That's why I don't really like using a Sharpie and just writing it on, because it's like, oh, wait a minute. What was the fourth ability to Jace the Mind? I don't remember what all the abilities. You got to write a lot of information on because you might not remember it. And it's not very meaningful for the other person across the table because they don't get to see the art. If you have a rules discussion, it's not all written down. It's kind of nice actually to have the card printed out, but it needs to actually look different. And that's the reason why putting something on your card, like writing proxy right on it, is really important. So it looks like the real card, but it's very clearly not the real card. If you buy or make cards that look like they make every attempt to look like real cards, that's effectively the same as lying. It's the same as counterfeit. It's not good, right? And it's not good for the hobby. It's not good for anyone. The collectors are hurt by that. The players get insulted by that. The company loses their intellectual property. Like, what we're trying to do here is we're not trying to make Wizards of the Coast lose money. We're not trying to damage a secondary market. We want to protect their IP. What we want to do is just kind of bridge that gap and help people come into the hobby a bit more cheaply. So then they can try it, see how much fun it actually is, and then they go out and start buying cards themselves. That's kind of the idea here. So anyways, that's my video. That's both how to make proxies and a little bit of soapboxing about how I think they are a good thing for the overall industry. So if you guys like this video, I'd love to hear about it. I want to hear some discussions below in the comments. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Bye.